Morning freaks, Sunday morning. How good are Sundays and how good are Sunday runs? I can't wait to get to the point where I'm running like 20 Ks again. It's gonna be fucking sick. Now today, we're gonna talk about running shoes and how long they actually last, because some of them don't do very well and some do really, really well. So what's going on with that? Also, now you can see why we didn't use this in the hat design for the final product, because they're absolutely stupid and annoying. Now, these are my go-to shoes currently for most of the running that I'm doing. Like, I don't know how long these are actually going to last for. They could last 200 kilometers, 300, 400, 500, 1,000, 1,500. I don't actually know yet, but after 200, they're looking pretty bloody good. Now, this is my running shoe graveyard. And in fact, a lot of these running shoes have actually outlasted me, and they've just continued on even when I was injured. So, you know, that's pretty epic. These hats, they're also pretty epic, and they'll last you 10,000 kilometers at least. Like this one, I had probably for about 8 months now, and it's been completely fine apart from this dangly little thing as a prototype. I even got it stuck in a washing machine in Italy, and I thought I was never going to get it back, but then I got it back. It's pretty amazing. Link is in the description. All right, enough ads. Let's fucking get going. The link is in the description. Okay, let's get serious now. Let's talk about some running shoe myths. Running shoe myth number 1 is that you can make your running shoes last longer by not wearing them and stretching them out. So that kind of sounds like some marketing BS. Essentially, I tested this out. I had 3 different pairs of New Balance 1080 version 12s. The midsole was the same on 2 of the pairs of shoes, even though they'd both done around 1,000 and a bit kilometers. But one of the shoes, I did 1,000 kilometers over a year, and one of the shoes I did 1,000 kilometers over 4 or 5 months, and the same amount of millimeter drop in the midsole was the exact same. So basically, just wear your shoes until they're dead, and you're gonna get the same amount of life out of them no matter what. They don't spring back and rebound. That is myth number 1, done. Now, myth number 2 is that you should listen to shoe reviewers and people on the internet and shoe manufacturers to figure out how long these shoes actually last, because it is just BS. I've had shoes last way less than what they say on the internet, and I've had shoes that have lasted 5 times the amount of time before they were dead. It's just really determined by a couple of things to do with yourself, the actual shoe that you choose yourself and its interplay into the way that you actually run, and of course the surface that you run on the shoe. All of these are going to determine how long the midsole is going to stay responsive and not feeling like a dead piece of shit, and how long the outer sole is going to last. And by the way, can we stop doing this, shoe manufacturers, please, where like there's just bare midsole just sitting there? It just, the amount of times that a rock has like hit that and just completely shredded it on my shoes, like, come on, just fully cover the thing. Okay, foot strike pattern. Let's talk about that first. This shoe worked really well for me, and this shoe I actually put in 1,700 kilometers before they felt completely dead in the midsole here. And that's because the geometry of this shoe and the way that the foam was set up worked perfectly with my midfoot strike. There wasn't too much foam on this side, which meant that I could get onto the forefoot without having to scrub my foot along the road, which really, really helped. Now contrast that with this Nimbus shoe that I wore after using that shoe. Not this one, but another color. They were black. But this heel is just way too big. And so I could never really get onto that midfoot without scrubbing this, which just made the shoes last like 300 Ks before they were completely dead. This is what I mean by using your own personal, you know, foot strike pattern and gait to determine what kinds of shoes are gonna do the best for you. A person that lands more on their heel is gonna do much better with this kind of shoe, because you can see by the geometry, like it is set up to land around here rather than here where I normally land in my other shoes. That's really important, and that is why this lasted way longer than this. But what you have to do sometimes is turn over the shoe to figure out where your gait is actually breaking down. As you can see, all of this side of the shoe is completely scrubbed away, which makes me think that there was friction here, probably from where I was landing on the outside of this shoe and then scrubbing my foot, probably as I was pronating. Plus, I was getting a little bit of, upper removal on here, probably from toe off. And so the same thing goes with this pair of shoes that I had too. This whole side is completely scrubbed off. And then we have these shoes, which I wore quite a lot. And as you can see, once again, this whole side completely scrubbed off and the toes are completely pulled off too. Now that's really interesting because that tells me that there's something about my gait that is ruining those kinds of shoes. Very, very interesting. Now, if you look at these ones, there's something about these shoes that are doing really, really well because I'm getting no wear pattern after a few 100 kilometers at all. Like even on the outside, which tells me that this geometry is working well for me. And this shoe is probably going to last a long, long time before the outsole and the midsole start to fall apart. The reason why this geometry is working so well for me right now is because you can see that the foam stays very thick through here right until the end. Unlike something like that where it's flattening off much, much earlier. These shoes are still really good, but I guarantee you that I'm going to be wearing these way more. So the heel is not as big for me, which is absolutely fantastic. And also, if you look at the shape of the shoe, the outsides comes really far out, which is forcing me off my heel onto the midfoot on the outside. Whereas this shoe, so if we compare these two, you can see this midsole here kicks right out, whereas this one is very rolled. And that's why I'm just tearing through this one. Whereas in this shoe, I'm just landing really nicely on here and then rolling through as I normally would. That is why that shoe is working really well for me. If you can break that down in your head, you're going to be able to pick better shoes and they're going to last much, much longer. There's a little hot tip for you that probably no one on YouTube has ever talked about before. Pretty cool. Now I just got to go get a pair of shoes. These Vaporflies probably lasted 300 kilometers before the toes started to really rub off. And I think it's just due to the way that I actually run. I probably ever so slightly twist my foot as I'm coming off the ground. And this is interesting for me to know because next time I buy a pair of shoes, I need to get a pair of super shoes for this particular speed range that has a little bit more foam and a little bit less of a kind of camber roll thing like this. Like you see how this Nova Blast doesn't quite, the toe doesn't quite come right up. Whereas Vaporfly, there's just such a harsh thing there that I'm probably getting onto the toe and just kind of scrubbing off. That's interesting to know and that's interesting to break down. And it makes sense why those shoes did not last very long. I would probably do much better in a pair of Asics Metaspeed Edge or Sky. I don't know which one is which. It's a bit confusing. But one of them looks very much like the Nova Blast in the way that the toe kind of like just rolls up towards the end rather than having a big beak like this, like a bird beak. You see how it's kind of weirdly shaped? Okay, so here's the next thing to think about when understanding how long shoes should actually last. I wore these shoes on trails, which is not good for a road shoe. And so that's going to definitely impact how long shoes are going to last because the outer is just not designed to take any kind of, gravel running, because what tends to happen on gravel is you kind of get a little bit of slip in the actual outer. And plus my own actual, running issues just get completely exacerbated by the fact that you're running on gravel and trail. Like, look at this. It's just completely cooked. Now, running on trails, you might even find that you're running slightly slower than you would on concrete. And so that should probably determine the kinds of shoes that you do wear on trails if you're just going to continue wearing road shoes, even though it's going to kill them off. But take that into account when you're picking shoes to get the ones that last the longest. Ones that feel good at trail running, easy pace, are going to last longer because you're not crushing them. But I want to hear what you guys think of this kind of analysis of how long shoes should last, because realistically it just depends on you yourself rather than the actual shoe itself. How do you run? What's your gait pattern like? What speeds are you running? And what surfaces are you running on? That will determine how long your shoes actually last. But thank you guys so much for the support. It's absolutely insane. You guys are buying hats like crazy. It's fucking absolutely wild. Love you guys. See you guys tomorrow for Q&A Monday.